Hello, you're watching TVP World Talks. I'm Jonasz Ryliński. Cooperation between Weimar Triangle countries, Poland, France and Germany, is gaining more significance in the light of the latest international developments. Germany remains one of the linchpins of both European defense industry and the support of Ukraine's struggle against Russian aggression, while France is mulling extending its nuclear umbrella to other nations to complement existing NATO safeguards. How should Poland craft its foreign policy in order to take advantage of the many layers of mutual cooperation, both European and transatlantic, while also navigating the perils of political change in all three Weimar Triangle member states? Joining us here today is Jens Boysen, Associate Professor at the Civitas University, specializing in the history and politics of Central and Eastern Europe, in particular Polish-German relations. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation.
So do you think the Weimar Triangle is in for a revival of sorts?
I hope so. It definitely has the potential to do so, because in its long history since 1991, it has repeatedly done so. There have been phases when it lay kind of dormant because it was actually neglected by its leaders, but then it could be reactivated, and we're seeing the same thing happening now again. Of course, in the context, as you said, of the general threat situation facing Europe, especially Central Eastern Europe. The visibility depends really on the regularity of the meetings. That was the weak point in the past, that repeatedly meetings were called off or delayed because so some domestic reasons, or that showed to the general audience, if it watched, that leaders didn't take this format too seriously, at least not all the time. I think to improve the situation, they should really make these meetings obligatory and simply attend them. You never know what happens, what the outcome is, but it would show to the general audience that this is really an important element of internal EU policy, as these are leading EU member states, but also, of course, a kind of a high-rank think tank for common foreign policy. And I think the costs are relatively low and the potential benefit is relatively high. And let me add one thing. Ministerial meetings are just, so to say, the upper level of this. All the time, and local and regional groups in the three countries work on different projects related to Weimar Triangle. Unfortunately, these projects get little public attention, but they are the actual backbone of the whole system. And so I think there's a lot of energy that can be activated to make this format more efficient and a better instrument for common foreign policy.
Do you think there is enough mature strategic thinking in all three countries to make it last? Because there is a question of alignment of domestic politics, right? And some people say, well, this is a great format, but if there is a populist government, especially a Eurosceptic one, in at least one of these countries, this could all unravel.
Theoretically, yes, and we have, in a way, seen this, let's say, in recent years. It wasn't only Poland, but repeatedly Poland that decided to not attend these meetings. As I said, it depends on what importance the governments attach to this format. I think the lightness and the informality of the format is an asset because it allows a great flexibility for those wanting to use it. But of course, you're right. If the general attitude of a given government should generally downgrade the significance of cooperation and try to maybe follow a separate path, that could weaken the format, but it would have an impact on the whole common foreign policy of the European Union. And I think to me, it's clear, bigger or smaller member states, we all need this common foreign policy to be visible in the world. And as we see right now, in the face of these very unfortunate crises and escalations on the planet, the EU has little choice but to show a reactive position, to comment on it, to show its concern. But our bargaining power is relatively small, so including the war in Ukraine, but not only. So this is the one positive takeaway is that the EU has now finally started to try to enhance its defense capability, and also this way its credibility as a global actor.
What happens if, for example, you have Alternative für Deutschland making further gains, perhaps at some point actually forming a government? Do you think that they would still understand the importance of cooperation, or would they take a course towards a more confrontational approach instead?
I shouldn't hope so. The one thing is, of course, that this party so far hasn't said very much about foreign policy. There are things that we don't like to see, especially an unclear attitude towards Russia. That is certainly an problematic fact. But by and large, I think any government that, so to say, enters into the existing structures will be bound to continue the major commitments and structures. I mean, personally, I think any talk about leaving the EU or leaving NATO, this is really just a fog of war in the election campaigns. I think this is not a serious attitude. So my fear is very limited. It is more about general discussion culture, how to find ways to talk to the European partners. But it's hard to tell because it's too early, but other parties have learned that too, so it would be positive that in such a theoretical case, that party would learn it too. I don't see this as a major reason for the EU falling apart. There are much bigger dangers for our dysfunctionality. It's not the fact that a particular party might enter the government.
What about NATO skeptics? I mean, there were suggestions like that, not just from the AfD, but also from the party of Marine Le Pen. They do not attach a particular value to NATO, or at least this is what some of their politicians said.
This is true. I mean, in France, this is an old issue that, excuse me, please. France has never been too happy to be obliged or forced to be just another junior partner of the United States. They always dreamt to be more. But just like Britain, Germany, Poland, and the others, we are bound to this alliance, and this alliance will last. Whatever is happening right now, attitudes or how much you like doing something. I mean, this is part of politics. France too has always, in the final end, stood to its commitments. And as you said, you mentioned this earlier. It's now has started with Germany a scheme to extend we don't know which way, but to somehow extend its nuclear shields to other EU member states. And this is at least a positive sign that France is ready to take responsibility. And like all other NATO member states in Europe, all the trouble we've had recently with Mr. Trump, there is no option of leaving NATO either for us or for the US. So this is not my concern. The concern is, of course, the atmosphere that we're losing energy and time with these internal struggles that are really useless, while we have to face up to so many external threats. I hope things will calm down, and in the end, we look into the real achievements laid down in agreements, and I'm relatively optimistic here. Let me mention the fact that interesting phenomenon in recent years that inside NATO and inside the European Union, we've seen a number of bilateral security agreements that usually include very concrete armament projects between Poland and the UK and France and Germany and France and Poland and all across our continent. These bilateral agreements have mushroomed in the last 4 years, especially since the war in Ukraine, full-scale war, started. And one could ask, are these bilateral arrangements supportive to the overall NATO and EU multilateral cooperation, or are they kind of countercurrents? I hope they're supportive, because I see them as a way for NATO and EU member states to fill existing gaps. We have many gaps still in our defense structure and our defense capability. And all the good initiatives that the European Commission has started in recent years, and we have a plan, we have a roadmap, but it's a slow process. The building of a viable European armament industries is only in its beginnings. We rather see the reinforcement of existing national security and armament sectors, including in Poland, which is developing very fast. So I think typically for the EU, we have a patchwork approach. We have the overall multilateral level, of course, take strategic decisions, but underneath, so to say, we have these many smaller bilateral and maybe minilateral arrangements that seems to be reinforcing the actual defense capability. So we could say, if I may put this a bit ironically, the appearance may be messy, but this is not new in the European Union. What matters is the final outcome.
Speaking of rearmament, there has also been a discussion in Poland concerning the SAFE program. Do you think that, once again, domestic politics could actually interfere? We have the opposition asking difficult questions about this program, about this being a loan, about who will benefit from it, suggesting that we will lock ourselves into just European buyers, not American or, manufacturers, but not ones from the United States or South Korea, for example. Are these fears justified, and what can be done, perhaps, to further reinforce this rearmament effort?
Yes, not just the Polish, or let's say voices in Poland have raised concerns about this element in the SAFE program, that there should be, I think, a 65% element of buying European, which is fundamentally a good idea. The question is, can the European market deliver this? And we've seen this in recent years, especially taking Poland as the best example, buying massively in South Korea and the United States, mostly because the European producers couldn't deliver within the short time span that the Polish government had defined for, in strengthening its army. I think this, over the years, this will kind of maybe become more complex and diverse, so to say. But this is a challenge, and many governments have said this, maybe not as loudly as the Polish one, that this might be a problem. What I find a bit, difficult to understand is why parts of the Polish political class seem to see in this generous loan a threat to national sovereignty. I mean, we can discuss the payback schemes and how long this takes, but I think it's an element of European integration, the sheer fact that there is such a program with such a large financial backbone. And again, Poland has been earmarked to receive the largest part of that. Okay, it's a loan, it's true, it's not a grant this time, but there's still a commitment. It still means, and as the Polish government has said, the conditions are relatively positive. It's cheaper to take this money from allies. I mean, this is not just any companies or banks, these are allied nations. And personally, from political angle, I think that's the best option. Financial issues are a separate issue. I do not want to judge on the statements made by particular Polish politicians, but I'm sad to see this kind of distrust in this given situation. I hope they will make use of this possibility, as will other member states. And in the end, if it's about defense, and Poland knows this better than anyone else, spending money in the end is of second-rate importance. Of course, we have to be economic. Poland has said, and this is a good idea, to use this situation, this need to rearm, to improve all the European armies, to also develop further the armament sector, also to make this a source of income for Poland and other countries. But this all must be taken care of together. And I hope that these unnecessary political waves will calm down and we come to a really common approach to this.
Professor Jens Boysen was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Have a nice day.
And I'm Nash Lewiński. You're watching TVP World. Please stay with us for more latest news, updates and commentary.